I'm sitting here, waiting for patchwork. It's a really enjoyable experience, I guess. Ah, there he is. Oh, he's not that healthy. That could be one What happened to Patch? He was so surprised that he was defeated. Oh well.
His eyes are upon you at all times.
Well done, Death Knight. The remaining Scourge will be dealt with. Scourge. Scourge. The remaining Scourge will be dealt with in short order, and the rebuilding process will begin anew. I have but one last task for you. You are now, and forever will be, a Knight of the Ebon Blade, Gordoth. But know this, you were once a hero of the Alliance. Darien stares at you. This order must establish allies for itself if it is to survive. You must represent the Knights of the Ebon Blade to the Alliance. On the platform southeast of me is a portal to Stormwind City. Take this letter, given to me on your behalf by Lord Fordring, and deliver it to King Anduin Wren. Use the portal.
The might of the Scourge will not be challenged. His will be done.
Bears the seal of Fordring. Majesty, O merciful King, may the light stay your hand and steady your heart. Hold your judgment upon this fallen champion, if only for a moment, and hear my words. The bearer of this letter is a former hero of the Alliance. Though he carries with him the stench of death and the look of the Scourge, he has the soul of a champion, a soul that has only recently been returned with the body. Gordoth represents a new, united front against the Lich King, known as the Knights of the Ebon Blade. Yes, Majesty, Death Knights turned against their former master. They are led by the son of Lord Alexandros Mograine, the Ashbringer. They seek what we seek, what we all seek, the end of the Scourge. I ask not that you accept Gordoth and the Knights of the Ebon Blade into the Alliance, but only that you show tolerance. Remember, sire, by blood and honor we all serve. Respectfully, High Lord Tyrion Fordring. Whew. Let's see where that takes us. Why did I read it in a voice that was kind of similar to what Fordring would do when he what Fordring does when he speaks? It's reading. I should have done it in my voice. Oh. She spits on me. Fine. Spat on. Nobody likes you. I will march. Oh, there's flies all over me because I smell like death. Look at that. Or is that because I got spat on? Ooh, everyone inside spits on me. Nobody likes me. Looks like we're going to have ourselves an execution. My family was wiped out by the Scourge. Monster! Murderer! A rotten apple was thrown on me. You smell pretty bad. Nah, didn't I smell pretty bad in general? Let me actually take my weapon off, so that I do not, so that I'm not in danger. Banana. The scent is a mix between ghoul food and pig rump. Nobody likes you. You smell pretty bad. Looks like we're going to have ourselves an execution. None of them like me, but I'm still friendly with everybody. Rotten banana has been thrown at me. You disgust me. Hey man, come on, calm yourself. Jeez, that guy is wild. How dare you set foot in our city? How dare you set foot in our city? Like, spat on me. That's a lot of spit on me. I'm pretty rich now when it comes to spit and human DNA. Wait, what? Rento Galina cowers in fear. Murderer! Looks like we're going to have an execution. Ah, marching through Stormwind is such a pain. Everyone's murderizing me. Get a rope! Mardervella cows in fear. You disgust me. Why do we always go the same way? I want to see them hit. Oh, whoops! You disgust me. That was just chatting stuff. I think I can rush through here. Oh yeah, I can turn on war mode. Let's turn it on.
For the Alliance!
For the Alliance. Let's give me that. You disgust. I've been spat at for a long time now. Oh, these two. Let's hope they don't even see me, because that would be a problem. Get a rope! Dog, even you ignored me completely. execution. How dare you set foot in our city? You disgust me! Monster!
Greetings, friend. Stormwind will endure.
You have mere moments. Anduin stares off into the distance. Indeed, old friend, blood and honor. Anduin fixes his gaze upon you. Were it not for this letter from Tyrion, you would be in the heavens. Only an endorsement from one of the greatest paladins to ever live could have ensured your safety. We will work together against the Scourge. Against the Lich King. Glory to the Alliance!
Never lose hope.
People of Stormwind, citizens of the Alliance, your king speaks. Today marks the first of many defeats for the Scourge. Death Knights, once in the service of the Lich King, have broken free from his grasp and formed a new alliance against his tyranny. You will welcome these former heroes of the Alliance and treat them with the respect that you would give to any ally of Stormwind. Glory to the Alliance! Keyboard turning for effect and alright, we did it, ladies and gentlemen, we did it. I got through here. Now I have access to everything. I do. So, there's a million quests, books to read in here.
How are you?
I'll learn how to do archaeology, and archaeology, and archaeology, and archaeology, and archaeology.
Have a good one.
So forget any ideas. Not gonna deal with this. Actually, yeah, let's read some stuff. Let's read, ladies and gentlemen, let's read. Yeah, the War of the Ancients. Take a seat down. The World Tree and the Emerald Tree. For many years, the Night Elves worked tirelessly to rebuild what they could of their ancient homeland. Leaving their broken temples and roads to be overgrown, they constructed their new homes amidst the verdant trees and shadowed hills at Hyle's base. Hyjal. In time, the dragons that had survived the Great Sundering came forth from their secret abodes. Alexstrasza the Red, Ysera the Green, and Stormwind the Bronze descended upon the Druids' tranquil glades and surveyed the fruits of the Night Elves' labors. Malfurion, who had become an arch-druid of immense power, greeted the mighty dragons and told them about the creation of the new Hall of Eternity. The great dragons were alarmed to hear the dark news and speculated that as long as the world remained, the Legion might one day return and assault the world once again. Malfurion and the three dragons made a pact to keep the world safe and ensure that the agents of the Burning Legion, would never find their way back into the world. Alexstrasza, Lifebind, placed a single enchanted acorn within the heart of the Wall of Eternity. The acorn, activated by the potent magical waters, sprung to life as a colossal tree. The mighty tree's roots grew from the well's waters, and its verdant canopy seemed to scrape the roof of the sky. The immense tree would be an everlasting symbol of the Night Elves' bond with nature, and its life-giving energies would extend out to heal the rest of the world over time. The Night Elves gave the world tree the new name Nordrasil, which meant crown of the heavens in their native tongue. Nosdormu, the Timeless, placed an enchantment upon the world tree to ensure that as long as the colossal tree stood, the Night Elves would never age or fall prey to sickness or disease. Ysera and the Dreamer also placed an enchantment upon the world tree by linking it to her own realm, the ethereal dimension known as the Emerald Tree. The Emerald Tree, a vast, ever-changing spirit world, existed outside the boundaries of the physical world. From the tree, Ysera regulated the ebb and flow of nature and the evolutionary path of the world itself. The Night Elf Druids, including Malfurion himself, were bound to the tree through the world tree. As part of the mystical pact, the Druids agreed to sleep for centuries at a time so that their spirits could roam the infinite path of Ysera's dreamways. Though the Druids were grieved At the prospect of losing so many years of their lives to hibernation, they selflessly agreed to uphold their bargain with this era. Okay. The War of the Ancients. The Highborn's reckless use of magic sent ripples of energy spiraling out from the Well of Eternity and into the Great Dark beyond. The streaming ripples of energy were felt by terrible alien minds. Sargeras, the great enemy of all life, the destroyer of worlds, felt the potent ripples and was drawn to their distant point of origin. Spying the primordial world of Azeroth and sensing the limitless energies of the Well of Eternity, Sargeras was consumed by an insatiable hunger. The great dark god of the nameless void resolved to destroy the fledgling world and claim its energies as his own. Sargeras gathered his vast burning legion and made his way towards the unsuspecting world of Azeroth. The legion was comprised of a million screaming demons, all ripped from the far corners of the universe, and the demons hungered for conquest. Sargeras' lieutenants, Archimonde the Defiler and Manaroth the Destructor, prepared their infernal minions to strike. Queen Azshara, overwhelmed by the terrible ecstasy of her magic, fell victim to Sargeras' undeniable power, and agreed to grant him entrance to her world. Even her highborn servitors gave themselves over to magic's inevitable corruption and began to worship Sargeras as their god. To show their allegiance to the Legion, the Highborn aided their queen in opening a vast, swirling portal within the depths of the Well of Eternity. Once all his preparations had been made, Sargeras began his catastrophic invasion of Azeroth. The warrior demons of the Burning Legion stormed into the world through the Well of Eternity and laid siege to the Night Elves' sleeping cities. Led by Archimonde and Manaroth, the Legion swarmed over the lands of Kalimdor, leaving only ash and sorrow in its wake. The demon warlocks called down searing infernals that crashed like hellish meteors into the graceful spires of Kalimdor's temples. A band of burning, bloodletting killers known as the Doomguard marched across Kalimdor's field, slaughtering everyone in their path. Packs of wild, demonic fellhounds ravaged the countryside unopposed, though the brave Kaldarai warriors rushed to defend their ancient homeland. They were forced to give ground, inch by inch, before the fury of the Legion's onslaught. It fell to Malfurion Stormrage to find help for his beleaguered people. Stormrage, whose own brother Illidan practiced the Highborn's magics, was incensed by the growing corruption amongst the upper class. Convincing Illidan to forsake his dangerous obsession, Malfurion set out to find Enodious and muster as a resistant force. The beautiful young priestess, Tyrande, agreed to accompany Tyrande agreed to accompany the brothers in the name of Elune. Though Malfurion and Illidan shared the love for the idealistic priestess, Tyrande's heart belonged to Malfurion alone. Illidan resented his brother's budding romance with Tyrande, but knew that his heartache was nothing compared to the pain of his magical addiction. Illidan, who had grown dependent on magic's empowering energies, struggled to keep control of his nearly overwhelming hunger to tap the Well of Eternity, the Well's energies once again. However, with Tyrande's patient support, he was able to restrain himself and help his brother find the reclusive demigod, Enodious. Enodious, who dwelt within the sacred moonglades of the distant Mount Hyjal, agreed to help the Night Elves by finding the ancient dragons and enlisting their aid. The dragons, led by the great red Leviathan, Alexstrasza, agreed to send their mighty flights to engage the demons and their infernal masters. Enodious, calling on the spirits of the enchanted forests, rallied an army and of ancient tree men and led them against the Legion in a daring ground assault. As the Night Elves' allies converged upon Azshara's temple and the Well of Eternity, all-out warfare erupted. Despite the strength of the newfound allies, Malfurion and his colleagues realized that the Legion could not be defeated by martial strength alone. As the titanic battle raged around Azshara's capital city, the delusional queen waited in anticipation for Sargeras' arrival. The Lord of the Legion was preparing to pass through the Well of Eternity and enter the Ravaged World. As his impossibly huge shadow drew ever closer to the world's surface, Azshara gathered the most powerful of her Highborn followers. Only by linking their magics together in one focused spell would they be able to create a gateway large enough for Sargeras to enter. As the battle raged across the burning fields of Kalimdor, a terrible turn of events unfolded. The details of the event have been lost to time, but it is known that Neltharion, the dragon aspect of the earth, went mad during a critical engagement against the Burning Legion. He began to split apart as flame and rage erupted from his dark hide, renaming himself Deathwind. The burning dragon turned on his brethren and drove the fire of dragonflies from the field of battle. Deathwind's sudden betrayal was so destructive that the 5 dragonflies never truly recovered. Wounded and shocked, Alexstrasza and the other noble dragons were forced to abandon their mortal allies. Malfurion and his companions, now hopelessly outnumbered, barely survived the ensuing onslaught. Malfurion, convinced that the Well of Eternity was the demon's umbilical link to the physical world, insisted that it should be destroyed. His companions, knowing that the well was the source of their immortality and powers, were horrified by the rash notion. Yet Tyrande saw the wisdom of Malfurion's theory, so she convinced Enodious and their comrades to storm Ashada's temple and find a way to shut the well down from good. Get up! Woke up to this book here? Adrian and the Dragon Hunt. As the politics and rivalries of the 7 human nations waxed and waned, the line of guardians kept its constant vigil against chaos. There were many guardians over the years, but only one ever held the magical powers of Tirisfal at any given time. One of the last guardians of the age distinguished herself as a mighty warrior against the shadow. Aegwynn, a fiery human girl, won the approbation of the Order and was given the mantle of guardianship. Aegwynn vigorously worked to hunt down and eradicate demons wherever she found them, but she often questioned the authority of the male-dominated Council of Tirisfal. She believed that the ancient elves and the elderly men who presided over the council were too rigid in their thinking and not far-sighted enough to put a decisive end to the conflict against chaos. Impatient with lengthy discussions and debate, she yearned to prove herself worthy of her peers and superiors, and as a result frequently chose valor over wisdom in crucial situations. As her mastery over the cosmic power of Tirisfal grew, Aegwynn became aware of a number of powerful demons that stalked the icy northern continent of Northrend. Traveling to the distant north, Aegwynn tracked the demons into the mountains. There she found that the demons were hunting one of the last surviving dragonflies and draining the ancient creatures of their innate magic. The mighty dragons, who had fled from the ever-advancing march of mortal societies, found themselves too evenly matched against the dark magics of the Legion. Aegwynn confronted the demons and with help from the noble dragons, eradicated them. Yet, as the last demons were banished from the mortal world, a great storm erupted throughout the north. An enormous dark visage appeared in the sky above Northrend. Sargeras, the demon king and lord of Burning Legion, appeared before Aegwynn, and he bristled with hellish energy. He informed the young guardian that the time of Tirisfal was about to come to an end, and that the world would soon bow before the onslaught of the Legion. The proud Aegwynn, believing herself to be a match for the menacing god, unleashed her powers against Sargeras' avatar. With disconcerting ease, Aegwynn battered the demon lord with her powers and succeeded in killing his physical shell. Fearing that Sargeras' spirit would linger on, Aegwynn locked the ruined husk of his body within one of the ancient halls of Kalimdor that had been blasted to the bottom of the sea when the Well of Eternity collapsed. Aegwynn would never know that she had done exactly as Sargeras had planned. She had inadvertently sealed the fate of the mortal world, for Sargeras, at the time of his corporeal death, had transferred his spirit into Aegwynn's weakened body. Unbeknownst to the young guardian, Sargeras would remain cloaked within the darkest recesses of her soul for many long years. Book to the New Horde. The chief warden of the internment camps, Edelas Blackmore, watched over the captive orcs from his prison stronghold, Durnhold. One orc in particular had always held his interest, the orphaned infant he had found nearly 18 years before. Blackmore had raised the young male as a favored slave and named him Thrall. Blackmore taught the orc about tactics, philosophy, and combat. Thrall was even trained as a gladiator. All the while, the corrupt warden sought to mold the orc into a weapon. Despite his harsh upbringing, young Thrall grew into a strong, quick-witted orc, and he knew in his heart that a slave's life was not for him. As he grew to maturity, he learned about his people, the orcs, whom he had never met. After their defeat, most of them had been placed in internment camps. Rumor had it that Doomhammer, the orc leader, had escaped from Lordaeron and gone into hiding. Only one rogue clan still operated in secret, trying to evade the watchful eyes of the Alliance. The resourceful yet inexperienced Thrall decided to escape from Durnhold's fortress and set off to find others of his kind. During his journey, Thrall visited the internment camps and found his once mighty race to be strangely cowed and lethargic. Having not found the proud warriors he hoped to discover, Thrall set out to find the last undefeated orc chieftain, Grom Hellscream. Constantly hunted by the humans, Hellscream nevertheless held on to the horde's unquenchable will to fight. Aided only by his own devoted Warsong clan, Hellscream continued to wage an underground war against the oppression of his beleaguered people. Unfortunately, Hellscream could never find a way to rouse the captured orcs from their stupor. The impressionable Thrall, inspired by Hellscream's idealism, developed a strong empathy for the Horde and its warrior traditions. Seeking the truth of his own origins, Thrall traveled north to find the legendary Frostwolf clan. Thrall learned that Gul'dan had exiled the Frostwolves during the early days of the First War. He also discovered that he was the son and heir of the orc hero Durotan, the true chieftain of the Frostwolves, who had been murdered in the wilds nearly 20 years before. Under the tutelage of the venerable shaman Drekthar, Thrall studied his people's ancient shamanistic culture, which had been forgotten under Gul'dan's evil rule. Over time, Thrall became a powerful shaman and took his rightful place as chieftain of one of the exiled Frostwolves. Empowered by the elements themselves and driven to find his destiny, Thrall set off to free the captive clans and heal his race of demonic corruption. During his travels, Thrall found the aged warchief, Orban Doomhammer, who had been living as a hermit for many years. Doomhammer, who had been a close friend of Thrall's father, decided to follow the young visionary orc and help him free the captive clans. Supported by many of the veteran chieftains, Thrall ultimately succeeded in revitalizing the Horde and giving his people a new spiritual identity. To symbolize his people's rebirth, Thrall returned to Blackmoor's fortress of Durnhold and put a decisive end to his former master's plans by laying siege to the internment camps. This victory was not without its price. During the liberation of one camp, Doomhammer fell in battle. Thrall took up Doomhammer's legendary warhammer and donned his black plate armor to become the new war chief of the Horde. During the following months, Thrall's small but volatile horde laid waste to the internment camps and stymied the Alliance's best efforts to counter his clever strategies. Encouraged by his best friend and mentor, Grom Hellscream, Thrall worked to ensure that his people would never be slaves again. Okay, more books need to be read. Look at that, a book. Civil War in the Plaguelands. Ner'zhul the Lich King. Ah, I've read that one already! Ha-ha! I've read that one already, indeed. What about this? The Caldera and the Well of Eternity. I think I've read that one as well. 10,000 years before the orcs and humans clashed in their first war, the world of Azeroth cradled only one massive continent surrounded by the infinite raging seas. The landmass known as Kalimdor was home to a number of disparate races and creatures, all vying for survival amongst the savage elements of the waking world. At the dark continent's center was a mysterious lake of incandescent energies. The lake, which would later be called the Well of Eternity, was the true heart of the world's magic and natural power. Drawing its energies from the infinite, great dark beyond the world, the well acted as a mystical fount, sending its potent energies out across the world to nourish life in all its wondrous forms. In time, a primitive tribe of nocturnal humanoids cautiously made their way to the edges of the mesmerizing enchanted lake. The feral, nomadic humanoids, drawn by the world's strange energies, built crude homes upon its tranquil shores. Over time, the world's cosmic power affected the strange tribe, making them strong, wise, and virtually immortal. The tribe adopted the name Kaldurai, which meant children of the stars in their native tongue. To celebrate, Kaldurai Kaldore, I think Kaldore. To celebrate their budding society, they constructed great structures and temples around the lake's periphery. The Kaldore, or Night Elves, or no, I lost it somewhere. The Night Elves, as they would later be known, worshipped the moon goddess, Elune, and believed that she slept within the well's shimmering depths during the daylight hours. The early Night Elf priests and seers studied the well with an insatiable curiosity, driven to plumb its untold secrets and power. As their society grew, the Night Elves explored the breadth of Kalimdor and encountered its myriad denizens. The only creatures that gave them pause with ancient and powerful dragons. Though the great serpentine beasts were often reclusive, they did much to safeguard the known lands from potential threats. The Night Elves believed that the dragons held themselves to be the protectors of the world, and that they and their secrets were best left alone. In time, the Night Elves' curiosity led them to meet and befriend a number of powerful entities, not the least of which was Enodious, a mighty demigod of the primordial forest lands. The great-hearted Enodious grew fond of the inquisitive Night Elves and spent a great deal of time teaching them about the natural world. The tranquil Kaldore developed a strong empathy for the living forests of Kalimdor and reveled in the harmonious balance of nature. Yet, as the seemingly endless ages passed, the Night Elf civilization expanded both territorially and culturally. Their temples, roads, and dwelling places stretched across the breadth of the Dark Continent. Azshara, the Night Elf's beautiful and gifted queen, built an immense, wondrous palace on the well's shore that housed her favored servitors within its bejeweled halls. Her servitors, whom she called the Queldorai, or Highborn, doted on her every command and believed themselves to be greater than the rest of their lower caste brethren. Though Queen Azshara was loved equally by all of her people, the Highborn were secretly hated by the jealous masses. Sharing the priest's curiosity towards the will of eternity, Azshara ordered to educate the Highborn to plumb its secrets and reveal its true purpose in the world. The Highborn buried themselves in their work and studied the well ceaselessly. In time, they developed the ability to manipulate and control the well's cosmic energies. As their reckless experiments progressed, the Highborn found that they could use their newfound powers to either create or destroy at their leisure. The hapless Highborn had stumbled upon primitive magic and were now resolved to devote themselves to its mastery. Although they agreed that magic was inherently dangerous if handled irresponsibly, Azshara and her Highborn began to practice their spellcraft with reckless abandon. Enodious and many of the wizened Night Elf scholars warned that only calamity would result from toiling with the clearly volatile arts of magic. But Azshara and her followers stubbornly continued to expand their burgeoning powers. As their powers grew, a distinct change came over Azshara and the Nightborn. The haughty, aloof upper class became increasingly callous and cruel towards their fellow Night Elves. A dark, brooding pall veiled Azshara's once entrancing beauty. She began to withdraw from her loving subjects and refused to interact with any but her trusted Highborn priests. A young brazen scholar named Furion Stormrage, who had spent much of his time studying the well's effects, began to suspect that a terrible power was corrupting the Highborn and his beloved queen. Though he could not conceive the evil that was to come, he knew that our Night Elves' lives would soon be changed forever. The Guardians of Tirsfall, aftermath of the Second War, the Alliance of Lordaeron. Lord Lothar rallied Kel'Thalas, the Elves. However, they were duty-bound to aid Lothar, yes he says. Bewildered, having lost... Yeah, this was the Second War. Aftermath. The devastating Second War against the Orcish horde left the Alliance of Lordaeron in a state of shock and disarray. The bloodthirsty orcs, led by the mighty Warchief Doomhammer, Warchief Orgrim Doomhammer, not only smashed their way through the dwarf-held lands of Khazmodan, but had razed many of Lordaeron's central provinces as well. The unrelenting orcs even succeeded in ravaging the elves' remote kingdom of Kel'Thalas before the rampage was finally stopped. The Alliance armies, led by Sir Anduin Lothar, Uther the Lightbringer and Admiral Dalin Proudmoore pushed the Orcs south into the shattered land of Azeroth, the first kingdom to fall before the Orcs' ruthless onslaught. The Alliance forces under Sir Lothar managed to push Gloomhammer's clans out of Lordaeron and back into the Orc-controlled lands of Azeroth. Lothar's forces surrounded the Orcs' volcanic citadel of Blackrock's Spire and laid siege to their defenses. In the last-ditch effort, Doomhammer and his lieutenants staged a daring charge from the spire and clashed with the Lothar's paladins in the center of the burning steppes. Doomhammer and Lothar squared off in a titanic battle that left both mighty combatants battered and drained. Though Doomhammer narrowly succeeded in vanquishing Lothar, the great hero's death did not have the effect the warchief had hoped for. Turalyon. There was nothing left for the Raggots but to flee. Turalyon and his warriors chased. Number 2. I think I've read that one already. Guardians of Tirisfal. With the absence of trolls in the Northlands, the elves of Kel'Thalas bent their efforts towards rebuilding their glorious homeland. The victorious armies of Arathor returned home to the Southlands of Strom. The human society of Arathor grew and prospered. Yet Thoradin, fearful that his kingdom would splinter apart if it extended itself, maintained that Strom was the center of the Arathorian Empire. After many peaceful years of growth and commerce, mighty Thoradin departed on one final quest, never to return, leaving Arathor's younger generation free to expand the empire beyond the lands of Strom. The original 100 Magi, who were tutored in the ways of magic by the elves, expanded their powers and studied the mystic disciplines of spell-weaving in much greater detail. These Magi, initially chosen for their strong wills and noble spirits, had always practiced their magic with care and responsibility. However, they passed their secrets and powers on to a newer generation that had no concept of the rigors of war or the necessity for self-restraint. These young magicians began to practice magic for personal gain rather than out of any responsibility towards their fellows. As the empire grew and expanded into new lands, the young magicians also spread out into the Southlands. Wielding their mystical powers, the magicians protected their brethren from the wild creatures of the land and made it possible for new city-states to be constructed in the wilderness. Yet, as their powers grew, the magicians became even more conceited and isolated from the rest of society. The second Arathorian city-state of Dalaran was founded in the lands north of Strom. Many fledgling wizards left the restraining confines of Strom behind and traveled to Dalaran, where they hoped to use their new powers with greater freedom. These magicians used their skills to build up the enchanted spires of Dalaran and reveled in the pursuit of their studies. The citizens of Dalaran tolerated the magicians' endeavors and built up a bustling economy under the protection of their magic-using defenders. Yet, as more and more magicians practiced their arts, the fabric of reality around Dalaran began to weaken and tear. The sinister agents of the Burning Legion, who had been banished when the Well of Eternity collapsed, were lured back into the world by the heedless spellcasting of the magicians of Dalaran. Though these relatively weak demons did not appear in force, they did sow considerable confusion and chaos within the streets of Dalaran. Most of these demonic encounters were isolated events, and the ruling magocrats did what they could to keep such events hidden from the public. The most powerful magicians were sent to capture the elusive demons, but they often found themselves hopelessly outmatched by the lone agents of the mighty legion. After a few months of the superstitious peasantry began to suspect that their sorceress rulers were hiding something terrible from them. Rumors of revolution began to sweep through the streets of Dalaran as the paranoid citizenry questioned the motives and practices of the magicians that they had once admired. The magocrats, fearing that the peasants would revolt and that Strom would take action against them, turned to the only group they felt would understand their particular problem, the elves. Upon hearing the magocrats' news of demonic activity in Dalaran, the elves quickly dispatched their mightiest wizards to the human lands. The elven wizards studied the energy currents in Dalaran and made detailed reports of all demonic activity that they beheld. They concluded that although there were only a few demons loose in the world, the Legion itself would remain a dire threat as long as humans continued to wield the forces of magic. The Council of Suilamoon, which ruled over the elves of Kel'Thalas, entered into a secret pact with the magocrat lords of Dalaran. The elves told the magocrats about the history of ancient Kalimdor and of the Burning Legion, a history which still threatened the world. They informed the humans that so long as they used magic, they would need to protect their citizenry from the malicious agents of the Legion. The Magocrats proposed the notion of empowering a single mortal champion who would utilize their powers in order to fight a never-ending secret war against the Legion. It was stressed that the majority of mankind could never know about the Guardians, or the threat of the Legion, for fear that they would riot in fear and paranoia. The elves agreed to the proposal and founded a secret society that would watch over the selection of the Guardian and help to stem the rise of chaos in the world. The society held its secret meetings in the shadowed Tirisfal Glades, where the High Elves had first settled in Gordoth. Thus they named the secret sect the Guardians of Tirisfal. The mortal champions, who were chosen to be guardians, were imbued with incredible powers of both elven and human magic. Though there would only ever be one guardian at a time, they held such vast power that they could single-handedly fight back at the Legion's agent wherever they were found in the world. The guardian power was so great that only the Council of Tirisfal was allowed to choose potential successors to the mantle of guardianship. Whenever a guardian grew too old or wearied of the secret war against chaos, the council chose a new champion, and under controlled conditions formally channeled the guardian power into its new agent. As the generations passed, guardians defended the masses of humanity from the invisible threat of the Burning Legion throughout the lands of Arathor and Kelthnaris. Arathor grew and prospered while the use of magic spread throughout the Empire. Meanwhile, the guardians kept careful watch for signs of demonic activity. Any other books? Archaeology is a search for fact, not truth. If it's truth you're interested in, cut in Nordling's philosophy classes right down the hall. Everyone laughs. So forget any ideas you've got about lost cities, exotic travel, and digging up the world. 70% of all archaeology is done in the library. Research, reading. We cannot afford to take mythology at face value. Flit his eyelashes at Harrison Jones. Well, next week's Tanaris, starting with the excavation of Broken Pillar by Marvon Rivet Seeker in year 22. I'll be here doing research if anybody's got any problems for the next hour and a half. This has been Gordoth Enodious, and this has been the longest episode yet.